Hello, everyone. This is Mike from Dimensional Walking. And today we are going to talk about 1,500 pages. Actually, not all of them, just a few of them, at least for now, on UFOs and the different alien type entities that have been visiting our world. Now, these 1,500 pages came from a release from our government, specifically the DIA, which is the Defense Investigate Intelligence Agency, and they released this because Sun newspapers, which is Rupert Murdoch, part of the Rupert Murdoch group, filed a Freedom of Information Act back, I think it was about 4 years ago. And finally, to everybody's surprise, I guess, they released 1,500 pages, and some of it is some pretty juicy stuff. Not all of it, but some of it is. Now, I have not read all of it. I read some of it, but there's still a long ways to go. And I'm hoping somebody can summarize it. But anyways, I hope that be able to dive into it and see if there's some other things we can talk about on a video in a video, or maybe a couple of videos in the future. But anyways, today I want to talk about there was a couple reports in all these pages. There's quite a few reports actually, but the two that I want to talk about are one relates to the effects humans have had from encountering UFOs, and the other one has to do with UFOs and possible aliens, abductions and specifics. And also what I want to do is I want to talk about, in conjunction with that, I want to talk about my 1,500, coincidentally, I have about 1,500 plus interviews over the years, especially a period of about 25 years, primarily when I lived in the southeastern part of the United States and the southwestern part of the United States, where I did most of my abduction research and talked to witnesses, some pretty amazing stories. But I just want to kind of relate what we're hearing here from the government agency and kind of what I had found out many years ago. And still, I still do some interviews now, not as extensive. I don't spend as much time with it because I've kind of gotten past that to kind of understand it pretty thoroughly now. And people are still getting abducted and et cetera, et cetera. But some of this did confirm some of the areas that I was pursuing back when. And so that's kind of a cool thing when you get whatever you've been working on confirmed by a larger group of probably more smarter people than yourself. So anyways, first of all, these files came from a group called the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program. Okay. And that is part of the DIA, which I told you about. I want to just do a little bit of a side story. As I probably mentioned before, I ran a group in New Mexico called the UFO Paranormal Forum, which was a really popular group. We had some amazing speakers, and we probably had, probably 200 members. They didn't come every week or I think we did them every month. So it was a monthly thing. Sometimes we did a couple a month, but for the most part, and we had Travis Walton, we had several scientists, we had pilots, we've had just people from all walks of life, professional walks of life, law enforcement was a big one. People that really knew what they were talking about. It was pretty amazing. But anyways, one day I was at the meeting, and this guy comes up to me, and he didn't look like my typical member type, and I'd never seen this guy before, to be honest with you. And he he introduced himself. He gave his first name. I think it was Jim or something like that. But he says, "I am from the DIA." And I said, "Oh, really? Well, that's really nice. Thanks for coming." And he says, "Well, I'm here not as an official member on official business. I'm just here just to see what you guys do here." Coincidentally, where we had the meetings was only a couple miles from Kirkland Air Force Base. So it was so close he could actually walk from the gate to this meeting place, which we usually did in a library. Anyway, it was like a rec center thing. And so anyways, it was kind of interesting. And it wasn't unusual for us to get other people from other organizations, government organizations visiting us. Many times I would just, if I noticed somebody in the audience that I didn't recognize and they just didn't look like the typical person from Albuquerque, they were just dressed too good and had too clean of a haircut, etc. Not saying that, Albuquerque people are other than, good dressers, but whatever, they typically dress, more normal than kind of these agent type folks from the government. So anyways, I would always bring it up in a nice way, say, "Hey, it looks like we got some possible people here from the government, blah, blah, blah." And of course, everybody turned around looking for that particular person or persons. And it was kind of a joke after a while. But anyways, I really believe they actually did come. Most of them never came up and introduced themselves, though. In fact, he was the only one that I can remember. So anyways, just a little bit of a side story. Okay, so anyways, they one of the main reports, and this is the one we're going to talk about the most about, it was called the anonymous acute and subacute field effects on humans and biological tissue. And this was basically investigating when human observers got too close to either possibly an alien and or some of their equipment. Okay, so and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down my a list that they provided that shows the frequency, shows what they found, and then I'm going to kind of relate on those particular ones which ones I found and how it kind of matched up a little bit with their list. Okay, so anyways, they had about 300, I think it was around 350 cases that derived this list from. So I went, like I said, I went through it, and I'm gonna get to it here. Okay, here's the list. So I'm gonna have to put my glasses on. I'm sorry, but the print is really small in this list. So I'm gonna go through it and give you those statistics here. Hold on one second. Hopefully the cats aren't going to fight here in a minute. Looks like they're getting too cheap. One is getting too close to the other one. Okay, so here we go. This is a table of effects frequency. And so, like I said, I did about 1,500 abduction, 1,500 to 2,000 abduction interviews. Okay, now in their survey, they got about 129 people out of 300 and some that said they felt they had apparent abductions, alien abductions in this case, not human abductions. So in my studies, for the most part, everybody I came to, I really came to them because I thought possibly, or I heard that they possibly had an abduction. So mine is kind of like 100%, but all that really means is they apparently claimed. And let me explain how I kind of did my interviewing. There was like about 10 to 15 things I would hit them with. And when I say I would hit them with, I would question them. Okay. And so I'm going to give you what my list looked like. And typically, if I didn't at least get 5 hits out of the 10, and sometimes it was 15, then it would be like 7 or 8. I needed to get 50%. I needed them to tell me that 50% of the things on my list was on their list, or actually what they as abductees had experienced. That kind of gave me an idea that, yes, there's a good chance that maybe they were really abducted, and just not kind of other issues going on here. But that isn't 100%. It was just, gave me an idea. Yes, it's worth pursuing. It's worth going on. It's worth, et cetera. Because some people, they just want to kind of having other issues in their lives, and they just want to kind of throw it off on aliens, or somebody else. It could have been humans, but in this case, it was aliens. So anyway, so I always look for about 50 to 60% of my questions were answered in a very positive way after my questioning. So anyways, let me kind of give you those just so you kind of know where I was coming from initially. Okay, so paralysis, if they had paralysis, if they had any spells of unconsciousness, marks on their body, left marks on their body, prickling, tingling sensations, skin rashes, missing time, amnesia, okay? Smells, significant odors, smells that you normally wouldn't have. And there's nothing like a flower around. There's nothing like anything that would smell good, bad, or ugly, really. If all of a sudden it just came to you, especially during the period of you felt that you were abducted. Perceived time suspension. Now that is different than missing time, because some of the people would come to me and they would say, I was like a bit of I came out of this, the next morning of the abduction, I kind of came out of this state, or I was in this state of kind of, I couldn't perceive time. I was like kind of in slow motion, or was in no motion, but I was still awake. So anyways, that's what that means. And let's see what else. Nosebleeds. And let's see what else here. Itching. Itching was another one. Interesting enough, right? And there was a few other ones occasionally, and they would bring up a few things that I would add on to it. And sometimes that would get me to my 50 or 60% that I needed to feel comfortable that these people were abducted. Okay, so let's go through the list, some of the list here, and then I'll give you some of my impressions also. Okay, so I talked about paralysis. Yes, again, paralysis was a big thing. A lot of people experienced the paralysis just before they were abducted. They would turn into this, and I know there's a medical term for it, but these people were paralyzed. And the reason I believe they were more than just this kind of falling asleep, this altered state that you go into, that the scientists say, is that the fact when the abduction got going and the aliens become present, they cannot move, even though they know that this creature or whatever it is around them is there, and they try to move and they can't. That's the paralysis I'm talking about, okay? Then there was another, eye injuries. There was another one that they found, and that was pretty frequent. I did get some of that eye injuries. Typically, it was a very temporary situation, and it typically was the next morning when they seemed to wake up. They seemed to not be able to see very well at all. I don't know if it was an injury, but anyways, their vision, their eyes were not working well. Typically, that seemed to pass within the day. Medical exam. Pretty much all of the people that talked about if they were truly abducted talked about some type of medical exam, that they were taken into a ship or something, and it was very much a medical exam. They were probing, the whole story about that. So probing and plotting. Unconsciousness. A lot of them felt that they had, obviously it seems like when aliens approach them at night, even though they may wake up suddenly, they just seem to go back out. And it feels much different than being in a sleep state. It felt more like just being gone, right? Unconscious. The next big one, of course, is leaving marks in the body. Very, very common. The frequency here, I didn't think was that common. It was like out of the 356, it was about 33 of them talked about that. Again, this is one that was a big hit. I still get texts from people showing their bruises, their weird blues, their scoop cup marks. I've seen many, many, many of those over the years. I personally have not had any that I know of, but that was very common with the people that I talked to. Less common with what the government put on their list. Let's see what else. Prickling, tingling, and sensations. Yes, they all talked about that. Again, seemed to happen just as the abduction started. And then when they seemed to come out of it, they had tingling and all that throughout their bodies. Let's see what else. Pain. This is one thing that, let's see, it was 22 out of the 300 and some people for the government said they had some kind of pain. I don't remember anybody telling me about pain of any sort. They always seem to be pain-free, I guess, in many ways. Maybe there was so much other stuff going around, pain wasn't in their mind at all. So, induced headaches, migraines, yes, especially after they came back from an abduction session, I guess we'll call them. They talked about having migraines. In fact, some of them had them for several weeks later. Typically, they always pass, though, it seems. They never stuck forever. So, nausea and vomiting. Yeah, there was some of them had some nausea. Pretty, maybe out of my 1,000 plus, 1,500 plus, maybe let's say 15, 20 at the most, I guess, did mention it. And that happened pretty quickly afterwards. And then that was it. It was a pretty quick situation. Ground traces. I'm pretty sure on the list that what ground traces mean is that if they were out somewheres or outside, or maybe went outside after the abduction, they would find something like on the ground. I have a quick little story. I was doing some work in South Carolina with a family that had a lot of abductions. And so I went to the house, and right there where the girl that was I was working with, her bedroom was right next to it. It's crazy. There was this circle, very large circle, probably 20 to 30 feet across. And there was this kind of burn mark in the grass that they say that was here since she claimed she had her first abduction. Never went away. I actually took some soil samples from it and sent it off to MUFON. I never did hear what it was, but definitely grass didn't want to grow in that. So I'm guessing it was irradiated with something, or from the craft, I assume. So anyways, so that's what ground, I guess, evidence is. Let's see what else we got here. Amnesia, missing time. I kind of talked about that a while. That is very common. Many, almost, I don't want to say everyone, but geez, 50-60% of the people I talked to, the interviews I did, they had missing time, no doubt about it. That was very high on the list. Now in this list, let's see, where is it? Missing time was not many. 9 out of 300 and some. Boy, that's different. Okay, so then let's see, numbness. Yeah, numbness. That was kind of in the tingling sensation area, numbness, tingling. That happened maybe at one of their legs or their arm or something like that. It's usually it's one limb or the other. That wasn't very high either on their list. Insomnia. Yeah, people seem to have insomnia. I think a lot of that was caused by the fact that they were fearful that if they were one of these people that were so unlucky that they were constantly kind of having abductions, and they were fearful that it was going to happen. So because of that, they didn't want to go to sleep. So they show it quite low here. I don't think it was that high either on the ones that I did. But there was mention of it. And perceived time suspension. So I think I understand what this means, because there were some people that I had interviewed that talked about this. This was sort of like they were either outside or they kind of woke up from or got back from an abduction situation. But it was more of the people that were outside, and maybe they're walking in the woods and suddenly they have an abduction. It happens. And they would kind of go into this slow motion state, or they would go into the stop motion state where they were conscious, but they basically felt like they couldn't do anything, or they weren't. It's sort of like they were paralyzed, I guess, but they were very conscious, and they could see. Or they're in this slow motion where they felt instead of moving the way you normally would, they're moving very slow. And there were several occasions where people told me about that. I personally have had a couple of them. I'm sure anybody's had car accidents where you seem to go into these slow motions deal. This was more of a slow motion thing where all of a sudden you see the accident coming and it's like your mind goes into some kind of a weird thing. Sometimes it seems to help the situation and not hurt it. So, okay. And then let's see, hair loss. Yeah, there you go. Look at, see what happens? Yeah, there you go. Okay, enough said on that one. Okay. Then another one was nosebleeds. Now they had this very low. This surprised me. Okay, out of the 350 some people they talked to, nosebleeds only came up 3 times. Mine came up, I'm going to say probably, oh, Jesus. I'm going to say over 60% of the time. I'd have to go back and count everything, but yeah, I think it's 60% of the time. But the thing about the nosebleeds, I don't know if people are just thinking about nosebleeds right around the event, but these nosebleeds seem to start earlier in life. I had them when I was younger, on and off. And I'd probably been abducted is my point. And so I haven't had any, in the last 20 years or so, but I always remember having a nosebleed. And, I don't think it probably may have something to do with the abductions. I cannot really honestly tell you, but I really did. And other people bring the nosebleeds up, and it was a high percentage in the cases that the people I talked to. So that's nosebleeds. Then I want to talk about one more. One is sexual dreams of having sex with aliens, and pregnancies after the sex. Okay. I had several of them. I mean, when I say I don't mean I personally. What I meant is some of that interview did talk about that they had these kind of dream state encounters with aliens. Now, these are more dream state than abductions, which were very clearly aliens. They had this sexual encounter, and there was 2 women that talked about it. And then he also admitted during another session that they were pregnant. They had gotten pregnant, and they honestly didn't know how they got pregnant. Now I really believe them being sincere. They weren't kidding. And what happened was, on top of this very probably trauma for them, the fetus, after about 8 weeks, I think it was 6 for one and 8 for the other, disappeared. It just disappeared. It wasn't aborted. It wasn't anything else. They just disappeared. These particular people had abductions throughout their lives. So anyways, that was very traumatic for them. They had these dreams. They got pregnant. They didn't think they got pregnant the normal way with humans. And then these fetuses were gone. Now they weren't, 6 or 8 weeks. Obviously this is not a baby. It's a fetus. So anyways, that was very traumatic. So with that said, that is the end of part 1. I will continue going through the list and talk about more of these items and how it compares from the government's list, the DAA list, to my list, and we'll go for it from there. So thanks a lot. And if you like us, please like us. And please subscribe, and happy trails. Thank you. Bye-bye.